Guys, Savage Joy here with Real Progressives. Tonight I am joined by Mr. Josh Jones. He is a Green candidate running for governor of California. So thank you so much for joining us tonight, Josh.
Thank you, Joy. It's good to be on here.
Absolutely. I actually met Josh yesterday on Facebook, and we've been talking pretty much ever since. So I approve. He's a very nice guy. You actually started out as a Bernie supporter and helped with his campaign. And then after the Democrats, proved to be complete douchebags, you switched to the Green Party and are now running as a Green. Why did you decide to go that route? What was the deciding factor?
Well, okay, and I think we talked about this already, that I was at the DNC protest there in Philly, and, I had been a convener, too, for the electing the delegates. So the campaign had asked me, can you convene in your area? I guess at that time that was Congressional District 3. And so I, did that whole thing. It was May 1st in California. And I knew everybody who were delegates from my area where we elected them. Awesome people. So I knew them, and they were saying, hey, there's stuff going on in the DNC. We knew all the cheating and whatever that was going on. So we all went there to protest. A bunch of us drove all the way across the country on the 80 and then the 90 back there. And after it all went down, we were out there in FDR Park, because you're there in Pennsylvania, so you probably know where FDR Park is. We were there. There was a big stage. Oh yeah, you were there. Okay, probably right next to me. Didn't even know. And so it was, there were a lot of cool speeches. But then at the last day, I think it was like midnight or something. We had been waiting outside the barricade. The police had moved the fences back further and farther, so there's no way the delegates could hear us out there. Like thousands of us going, "This sucks," you're cheating or whatever. You're like, Bernie's the guy. And so we were all out there in the thousands, and we were waiting for the delegates to come out, the stalwart ones. And finally they emerged around like 12 or 1 or whatever that was. I forget what day that was. And we marched out to the boathouse in FDR Park, right by that lake. And there was a big rally, and basically what people were saying there, the leaders and the delegates and whatever, were saying like, Jill, not Hill, Jill, not Hill. That was the mantra. So we were like, all right, sounds good. Jill's saying all the same stuff as Bernie. She's even more anti-war. Let's go ahead and do that. And that, I guess the rest is history. I went over to the Green Party. It's interesting. I was already with the Green Party and I voted for Pito Cornejo here in California for governor several times. That was back in the day. So it's kind of interesting now to be in the same position as this guy that I talked to at alternate debates and stuff. I'm the endorsed, the California Green Party endorsed candidate for governor. So it's really interesting. And we're building the party in California massively. Many more county councils have formed. We're trying to get all of the counties in California, there are 58, established, so that we can have a real giant powerhouse of like super, progressives in California, pushing the agenda, pushing all the stuff we want, single payer, universal health care, and getting off of fossil fuels and all this other stuff. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's pretty amazing that the Green Party of California endorsed you, because you're not the only Green Party governor candidate. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's true.
So that's
Should we talk about them?
Pretty amazing. What do you think is different between you and the people that you're running against?
Well, let's see. I signed a document that said I wouldn't malign anyone who are other candidates. So I will see how I say this. It has to all be factual. The other guy did a poem, who's running for governor. It's something about stones and bowls and trigonometry. There's a little poem that he did for his candidate statement. Mine is like a 83 word, shrunk down. I had written a full 250 word candidate statement, but we shrink it down because surprisingly, and if you look in mine, you're over there in Pennsylvania, but those of you in California, if you look in your pamphlet, voter pamphlet, you'll see that one of the things that's listed in my candidate statement is the URL, candidate statements cost $25 a word.com. And that's true. My campaign manager, brilliantly, as we're driving over there to pay, trying to figure out how to keep costs low, we ended up paying about $2,000 for, 83 words. It's nuts. And just terrible. And so she said, wait a minute, if a URL is only $25, and we joked, like, what if we make the whole thing a URL? But that's ridiculous. It wouldn't be taken seriously. But we could put in this longish URL of a candidate statement costs $25 a word.com. And you can look it up on Google. You'll probably find it. There's sort of a longer candidate statement there as well about me. But my candidate statement is very respectable, right? And I'm a serious candidate. My opponent, who I won't name, he does a puppet show, and he plays guitar, and he's sort of promoting an album. So, whereas I talk about water policy in California and how to forward deploy the fire department so that we don't have these out of control wildfires, and I studied geology, and I was a solar electric designer for 4 years, and I created the industry standard for the United States for distributed electrical generation. So that's all sustainable energy. And I created that industry standard for the building field. So I'm a serious candidate. There's a write-in as well, who I won't mention, but if you really want to, you can go find out about that person.
You can mention her.
I'm not going to. I was told by various people who advised me that it's not smart to mention your opponents. If you do, use like I would say Newsom.
No, I meant the write-in.
Oh, well, I won't. It's fine. But okay. I am a serious candidate. We didn't even know about this other person who's the write-in in the Green Party at all. With my campaign, they asked many women before me. That's sort of the emphasis. The Green Party does try to compensate and emphasize women first because it's only fair. A lot of society is not stilted that way. It's not tilted in that direction. So we figure like it's better to tilt back toward that direction, towards feminism and whatnot, but in a good way. Not too much, not over, powering, just like leaning toward. And so they asked, I think 5 or 6 women. One of them was Susan Sarandon. She couldn't do it. They went through a list. There was an Indigenous woman down in Bakersfield that they asked. She decided not to. We went through an entire vetting process when I was approached for about a month with all the people in the party to make sure we had support, to make sure everything was cool. Okay, this guy is running. Is that fine? Or is there another woman around? And we didn't find anybody. So, the rest is history. I went on and announced that I was running at a big meeting. And so we've gone all over California, like 58 counties. Like that's how many counties there are in California. We've gone from Del Norte, which is the very far north, to Imperial County in the far south, and all points in between, cities, countryside, mountains, ocean, talking to the people.
That's incredible because I talk to so many candidates who run district, but you actually have to canvass the entire state, which is a little bit of a big state. So you guys have been going all over a lot, like, Mike Lachlan, who's also traveling up and down the state. So what other barriers have you found? One of our teammates, Sam, kind of read my mind, that they set up those barriers for Green Party members, especially because they know all of us are grassroots and we can afford all that money to make this big, long statement. So what else have you been noticing as far as running? I know some states you have to get like X amount of signatures to even get on the ballot or what have you. What other things are in place?
I mean, I have noticed that's one of the reasons why I switched from the Democratic Party as well, because I saw cheating at the national, the state, and the county level. And, you know, I was a Democratic Party leader for a time during the Bernie stuff, and I learned a lot. I learned what not to do. I learned how to do things, you know, Robert's rules and all that. It was really great education, actually. But the barriers, there are so many little gates. Let's see, off the top of my head, the $25 a word thing for the candidate statement, that's just the purview of the Secretary of State. It can be free. It doesn't have to be $25. He can make it $1,000 a word if he wanted to, you know. And, you know, other things, there's obviously a barrier to getting into the news on the media. You know, corporate media does not want somebody saying that a corporation is not a person at all, right? Corporation is a inanimate legal fiction. That's all it is. It doesn't deserve rights. People form companies, and they already have rights, like you and I. If we were in a company, people do that, come together and build things. Human beings naturally do that. And you have rights. You have like the right to speech and migration and these things. So do I. We don't need extra super rights to help us. It's not necessary. What we need is responsibility. So you know, but because they have indemnity, because they are distanced from the people and don't have to be responsible, even though you would think they're the fourth estate and they're supposed to make sure that everything's honest, they don't anymore. So they just shut us out, right? All the people, I mean, I know David Hildebrand, who's running here against Dianne Feinstein, Senator Feinstein, and he's a Democrat, and he's having the same kind of trouble that the other people in third parties are having. It's not really that he's, you know, third party or you know, one of the other two of the duopoly. Actually, they fight him too. So there's that barrier. There are a lot of here's a good one, actually, debates. So I've been on various debate panels. I actually was on a debate with, let's see, a Democrat, one of the leading Democrats, which I found very interesting. And I think it was rather brave of her. So I commend her for that. But there were two libertarians. There was the peace and freedom person and myself. So 5 of us. And 2 women, which was nice, and then 3 men. And a good balance. But that was in, what was that in, what city was that? I've been to so many cities now. But it was over on the coast in the Bay Area. And there had been another 2 days prior that only the Democrats and a couple Republicans could go to. And the criterion, and here's one of these gates that we're talking about. You had to have made in donations $100,000 1 year before that debate. Okay? One of the people running says they're corporate free. So here's the thing. If I had $100,000, that would be amazing, right? And California is a big state, so I could probably use that. I probably wouldn't need that much, half. But when we were in San Jose to do this debate, that's where we were. That was May 10th. And when we were there, I had found out prior it was $10,000 to get in. Okay, so if I had $100,000 a year ago, that's 1 year before the beginning of the primary. That's got to be corporate, right? Who gives you $100,000? How do you get $100,000 1 year before the election in the primary? Somebody told me that it was from her campaign manager. Well, last I heard, your campaign manager is supposed to get paid. They're not supposed to pay you $100,000. So maybe that person was bundling money like the Democratic Party or the Republican Party would do by getting corporate money in and then bundling that and sort of scrubbing it and then saying, okay, here's money for you. You're endorsed. You know, and that's what Democrats do, Democratic Party. Yeah. So how am I going to get in the debate in San Jose on May 8th? I'm not. There's no way. I have gotten a a considerable amount of small donations, $27 and maybe $100 here and there, and sometimes $10, averaging somewhere around 25 or 30. We've got, I think it's gone to about, in various ways. I think it's about 16,000, and we're near the end of the campaign. We basically have done almost everything we need to do. Although it would be helpful to get a little bit more. So I'll say this: if you will donate to me, it would be very helpful at Josh number 4, so josh4gov.org/donate. That you go through that URL and you'll see my page. But anyway, those are constrictions on being a corporate-free candidate, and I'm sure there are many others that we could cover. Money is one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. I've had Stephen Jaffe on. They're pulling the same shit with him. Yeah. It's disgusting. I figured somebody would bring up Delaney Sten.
That's what
the biggest difference between you and her is that she is a huge Hillary supporter. Mm-hmm. I personally do not trust people who are Hillary supporters with progressive platforms. They are bipolar opposite. To me, that's the biggest difference. I've seen a platform, it's progressive, cool, but if you're a Hillary supporter, I personally don't think you're going to stick with that. So anyway, not necessarily do you have to, say anything bad about her, but what differences do you see between yourself and her? Because she definitely is one of the front runners.
Yeah, that's true. Let's put some distance between us. I study geology and I understand hydrology really well. She may be against the Delta Tunnel project, but I understand why it is not good. And I understand why recycling of water in every municipality, every city in California, and recycling that through a very modern process so that it comes out drinkable at the other end, where a hydrologist can just drink it right out of the tap. You put that in a reverse well into the significant area of groundwater reservoir that's underneath most of the big cities in California. I can describe that, just off the cuff. No big deal. More detail, less detail. That's one difference. I grew up in the fire family, right? My dad was a fire captain and battalion chief on forest fires and wildfires. I mean, I grew up so much that, so people get divorced in the fire department a lot. He got divorced when I was about 5. He didn't have a babysitter. This is back in the day, okay? So where did he put me? In the fire station. I lived there for a couple months. No kidding. Go down the fire pole. They taught me how to do that. The firemen would go off the, whatever B shift or whatever would go off to do their thing, and their food would be out on the table because they have to run away from their dinner. And then the other ones would come in that are the replacements, and they'd eat all the food. Then they go get the ice cream and eat all that. There was kind of a game. They would eat the B shift's food. That's usually what I saw. Or remember, my dad was on B shift. And then they would come in and look at the training videos. So here I am, 5 years old, and they have all these loungers in there, and they turn on the thing, what happens when someone gets decapitated? What happens when someone's arm gets cut off? What do you do if someone is smashed into a car door? How do you get them out without killing them? So I'm 5 years old going, oh, okay, that's good to know. That's how things work. Okay, great. So, I grew up doing that, and it was in the Fire Explorers, and later I was in the Police Explorers when that group got disbanded because they let us fight a fire. So they got in a little bit of trouble. But so I'm steeped in that too, and so I understand the first responders very, very well. And I doubt that any of my competitors understand any of that, right? So, I grew up all over California, fishing around in the mountains and everything. My dad has a cattle ranch. I grew up, partly agricultural and partly in big city. So I understand those parts of California. A lot of people back east don't realize that it's still pretty cowboyish out away from the cities. And I actually have a cowboy hat and know how to ride a horse and grew up like roping and riding from when I was a little bitty kid. And so, and actually shooting a gun. Like my dad taught me all that stuff. That's why he named me Josh, was because he said he wanted to say, all right, Josh and Jake, let's go out on the range and herd cattle. So it's kind of weird. I have this like perspective of California. I have this connection with California as being a Western place. I can go talk to the country folk easily. I can talk to them about universal health care and convince them to not be fascist. And that, I think, is one of my missions. You know, I go out to all of these counties in California, and frankly, a lot of them are rural, like the vast majority up in the mountains or way up in far northern California or out in the valley, you know, what they call the Great Central Valley, or even down in the deserts. And, you know, if we don't talk to those folks out there, they will have no choice because they have been denied the choice of socialism, often, you know, especially with the new administration. They're going to go populist one way or another. And historically, what we see is that, you know, like in Germany, when the Volksgedanken, they call them the folk people, and the urban Gedanken, the urban people, quit talking, like what's happening right now in our society. But it's happening in California a lot too. When that stops happening, they both go different ways. And some of the folks go fascist because they, you know, they had, in their case, they had a depression, fall of Weimar Germany. And then, you know, the rise of Nazism. Well, that can happen here. And I've read a lot of books about that, predicting that in this exact way. But there is a way to pull it back from the brink. And that's by, you know, you get rid of divide and conquer by going out and talking. And I guarantee you that none of my competitors can do it the way I can do it. So that's another big, I would say a big, big difference is that I don't think she can get on a horse and with a cowboy hat and ride out to talk to those country people that you know, need to be brought back in the fold. They need to be told, look, your healthcare went up 30%. The ACA went up 30% in far northern California and Sierras. I've seen maps of it. What if we were all in one insurance system that's run by the state, where the state is the insurance company? We get rid of the stupid insurance companies that are scalping us, you know, like they're taking our money and our lives. And I should add, I'm part Native American, so I kind of, scalping is a little personal to me. I don't want to be, I don't want that bad of a haircut. So, and a lot of Native Americans were killed through Northern California. I don't know if you know that, but there was a whole like genocide thing that happened way up there. But in any case, I can talk to those people up there and convince them to come on our side. And that's what we need to do to pull us back from the brink. So there are a lot of differences between me and Delaney, actually.
Awesome. Right on. I have a question from Jeff Pearson. He kind of read my mind because this is a question I pretty much ask every single guest. You guys have the advantage of having open primaries. I'm in Pennsylvania. We do not, as you know, many other states don't either. What do you hope to see? Do you think everyone should have open primaries, paper ballots? What are you looking for, not just in California, but what do you hope to see in the near future?
I would like us to go to all paper ballot. I think that, you know, sometimes I think convenience can be a trick. And that the powers that be know that, you know, when people talk about bread and circuses from the Roman Empire. Now we have Netflix and no bread. Maybe we have Marchon. But, you know, they trot these little conveniences out to us like, oh, let's have computerized ballots and voting, and great. So you can just manipulate it all, right? If we go to paper ballots, when I was convener, I had to swear, like under penalty, that we had to have ballot box guards. I made this big ballot box, put Bernie stickers all over it, and it was all duct taped around. And, you know, it was really tall, so you couldn't get your hand in there. Even if someone tried to, they'd stick their hand in and it wouldn't work because the ballots are all at the bottom. So we did all that, right? And then we had to like everyone had to watch while we took it off and witness that, okay, they're down in there. Then we had to pour them out, and you had to have 3 eyes on every paper. We split them all up into batches. And, okay, so it takes longer. but you can trust it. Okay, if we can't trust our election system, why don't we all just fight with Nerf swords over it and see who wins? Because I know who would win. The Bernie people I saw out there, the 30,000 people I saw in Sacramento, and the other, and then a couple others that I helped run. I know we have an army of people. So I want our army of people to be reflected in the ballots that actually get cast. I do not want to see that someone comes along and says, oh, well, Bernie, he lost in California. Darn. I don't think he did. To be honest, I don't trust that he lost there, and I don't trust that he lost in Arizona, and I don't trust that he lost in New York, right? And it would be a whole different deal if that had happened. But because it happened, now there are thousands and thousands and thousands of us who are, it's not outraged, impassioned to run ourselves. Like he said, get out there and change these things, and have paper ballots. That would be it's a great goal, and I think we should do it.
Are you planning to also have people at as many polling stations as possible, just so they can kind of supervise?
I hadn't considered that. When we were collecting nomination signatures and all that, we had about 50 volunteers. I suppose it would be smart, although there are in California a tremendous amount of polling places. In my town alone, I think there are 5. So that would be but it's a good idea. I'll bring it up with folks.
I always suggest it to candidates because, we can't trust.
No, you're right.
Also, in California, you guys had over 3 million paper ballots in red boxes in a room that were counted after the election. You guys should be disenfranchised. You guys should be pissed off.
We are pissed off still. I mean, so I'll say I worked for a year on the Bernie campaign, but actually, because we started it in June of 2015, right after he said that he was running. We went over to Sacramento, checked that group out. It was 30 people. We came back to Davis. We said, well, shoot, we can do it in Davis then. And we're about 20 miles west of Sacramento, which is the capital. And we started getting a bunch of people, and we ended up with 300 volunteers over that period of time. We won Yolo County for Bernie with $5,000. I saw when I was Democratic, I was in the Democratic Party for a while. I saw afterward that they spent $130,000 to lose in the primary. So it shows you what we can do. If we just have a little bit of money and a lot of people power, we can actually win despite the cheating, which is amazing, right? We just have to overpower the cheating. I would like to see it that we don't have any cheating, but when it came to it, we were already through the primary, and then we were into this. Okay, well now, in California, and then we're like, okay, what happened with the provisional ballots? And it's kind of up to the SOS, the Secretary of State, whether or not that's counted. There were millions of those things out there, and we saw even, so a lot of us went to observe, and a lot got counted, but we saw videos where they were being whited out. I don't know if you ever saw that, but like purple gloves where they're being whited out. We saw a truck. It's hard to tell what happened, but there was a paper shredder or a truck that was backed up to a paper shredding place under, I think that was Michael Vu was served with papers, and so was the Secretary of State. So we don't really know how much. We know that we won here. Finally, we tipped the scales in Yolo County, and Santa Rosa did, Santa Barbara, Santa Cruz. I mean, not Santa Rosa, San Luis Obispo, and then far northern California and the Sierras. But what it looked like to me was that there were some places where people were super hardcore, and we pushed it over the edge, even though there was cheating. And then maybe they ignored the Sierras and the far northern California because it's lower population. That's an educated guess on my part. But I think we won California. I think a lot of states actually went for Bernie. I will say that I want to say this before it gets forgotten because I keep trying to remember this. So as far as my race goes, there were 27 for governor. in California right now, there are 27 candidates running. There are 12 Democrats. There are 5 Republicans. There are many independents. That number fluctuates. I think it's about 5 or 6 or 7. And, there's one PNF, there's me and a couple others. So if you look at the Democrats, right, okay, it's something like 45% of the electorate are Democrats. But if you divide up 45%, right, by 12, that's a low number. So the polling that they're doing, they'll skew the polling, right? They call people with landlines only, or they kind of fix it because stats can always be tweaked. They fix it so that it's mostly Democrats that are being called or whatever. They try to give a big number. But do you know that the number for the supposed leads in the gubernatorial race are shrinking? They've been shrinking over time. Right now, it's 56%. Is that right? 56%? Is accounted for. 44% is not accounted for. Let's say I'm that unaccounted for and decided 44%. I blow them away, right? Maybe it's a little bit here and there or something else. But if Newsom gets like 12% and I get 30, I could win. The whole game has changed. Look at higher up Democrats are now saying, I'm corporate free now, right? Like Delaney, like, who's the other one?
Kamala Harris.
Kamala Harris, right? So Kamala Harris has said this. Do you know what power that gives us? It's amazing that we sit there. All you have to do is say, I'm not taking corporate money. I'm going to do this with contributions from regular people. I'm a regular person. I work my ass off for this, but I'm a regular person. I've got a lot of experience. All I got to do is keep doing that. And I am never, ever going to take corporate money. I never have. I never will, because you know why? I don't want to be a slave. That's it. It's simple. I don't want someone telling me what to think. That's all. I want to be able to go out, talk from my heart, right? Talk to real people, find out what the problems are on the ground, what the solutions are that they already know because they live there. And then I just shop that around and take, I found out that you all have the same problems along the coast. Your rents are going through the roof. And Airbnb is buying up this housing stock all over the place and displacing people. And people are actually saying, I got thrown out of my house because this guy charged 3 times the rent. So you can just say, all right, well, let's fix that by having a statewide regulation. You have to, if you're going to have Airbnb, if you're going to be absentee landlord Airbnb person, you have to live in your house for 9 months out of the year. That's all. You want to go to France for 3 months? Great. That sounds fun. I like going to France. I've been in Europe. It's fun. People are really nice there. But if you're like a homeowner that's renting out the side room, that's just adding to housing stock. But that's a very simple solution that could change a lot. We could also say anybody who is an investor in California, because it's, investment place for houses, cool place to live, vacation, go to conventions. I'm not going to say that you can't buy a house in California and invest in it as an absentee landlord. But I would say that after a couple months, the bank has to rent that house out to people. You can't just leave it sitting around for years and years. If that had happened after the crash, all the people who had been thrown out of the street could go right back in the same house they lived in, which would be better for the kids, right? And there are other things in that sense. Costa-Hawkins needs to be overturned. You may not be aware of it, but that's a law that says that you can't have rent control in municipalities. So by going all over California, we pick up on, where there's pollution. We're doing what politicians are supposed to do, what they quit doing. Instead of they just go get corporate money and they go to I'll go to LA and San Francisco. And that's not serving the people.
Absolutely. So on the note of housing and such, do you support a federal job guarantee?
I haven't heard it described. I mean, I've heard that term before. I haven't thought about it so much in those terms, more in the terms of a works program. I think it's very, very important for us to, I'm running on a state level, so it's less geared towards federal. I would support something like that. But I think that the old FDR style of a works program is a really good one because, one, we have a bunch of infrastructure we need to rebuild. roads and bridges are falling apart. But not only that, we need to just switch entirely over. In the 19th century, they had coal and steel rail infrastructure, right? They used coal for energy. Then they went to the 20th century. They have roads like asphalt roads and that sort of thing, and gasoline and diesel in those trucks. That's 20th century. Now we know about climate change. Now we know about pollution in that way, and also we need to change the infrastructure over. Let's change the damn infrastructure. Let's get a whole bunch of people to work like they did back then. But we're not going to make dams this time, because we're not going to throw hundreds of millions of dollars at giant walls that go in front of rivers. They'll break eventually, in 100 years, which is what happens. Concrete gets brittle as it hardens. Back east, you've already been seeing that. Bridges or dams have to be taken down because they get old and fragile or just blow out. There's that reverse well sort of idea where you put it down in the groundwater reservoir and it doesn't evaporate. So that's a whole new technology. We would do the same thing with cars and trucks and even electrical distribution systems. So, like hardened electrical distribution is a thing that the military talks about, so that if there was a giant solar flare, it wouldn't blow out the whole electrical grid for 4 years. Imagine if you couldn't get any electricity for 4 years, what would happen to this place? So I'm talking nuclear meltdown problems, right? Like Fukushima. So we have to rethink what we're doing. And the oligarchs, they are greedy as fuck. I'll say it. They want to squeeze blood out of a turnip until there's no more turnip left. Well, guess what? There's no more turnip left. The millennials and Gen Z and even Gen Xers know that this is done. We need to do the infrastructure again. We need to put a whole bunch of people back to work with the works program of whatever way you want to call that, and get all this stuff done. We need to get off of fossil fuels by 2030, because the curve for getting off of fossil fuels, if we had done it decades ago, it would have been nice and easy. Now it's steeper. Now we have to really, but if you invest, right, there's ROI, return on investment. If you invest in your people, if you create free public education, if you have universal health care like all the other industrialized countries have, if you fix your infrastructure and you invest in your country, we will see a golden age that we haven't seen before for everybody, not just for white people, because that's what happened before. But you saw that the difference between, let's say, other countries that were developing and the United States, it was phenomenal after the Depression because of that investment. So this is what's happening right now. I really firmly believe that what we're seeing is the push, the struggle to get the oligarchs to give way and finally just invest, like, let us invest. We're going to raise your taxes. Sorry, not sorry. Except it needs to be progressive, right?
Yeah, for sure. You also talked about, you kind of touched on white people and how things have been advantageous in that respect. So on that note, you do talk about for-profit prisons on your site, and that's something I talk about all the time. So you also support cannabis legalization. So those go hand in hand with people of color being stuck in prison. And I know from other guests that California does have a lot of for-profit prisons. What is your take on that, and what would you like to see change?
Ultimately, I want to see the 13th Amendment altered so that it only says slavery shall no longer be legal. And that's what we're all taught in school. They don't usually include the comma, which is comma, unless you've been convicted of a crime. So what they did, I think, is the slave advocates and the freedom advocates got together and they cobbled this thing, and they said, okay, what we'll do is it's not palatable. Everybody hates it now, and it's immoral. We'll just make it that if people commit a crime, we'll put them behind walls and hide it from everybody because it's not okay to, no one wants to see that anymore. Well, the fact is, it's just immoral, period. Doesn't matter how it's justified. And so that comma is evil. I think it's just straight evil. What happened was the vagrancy laws appeared right away, and people were scooped up because they didn't have a place. They got kicked out of the plantations or ran away from plantations. And, oh, you're a vagrant. Okay, here, prison, right? Slave labor. And then later the drug laws happened, the drug wars. And so it's just another reason to predate upon people, grab them up, disproportionately black and brown, put them in prison. It's the same exact thing over and over and over. And we have to get rid of that entirely. Now, it's going to take some time to do. In the interim, we need to get rid of the felon checkbox we have here in California. If you go to apply to a job, right, you're trying to get your life straight, and they say, oh, were you a felon? You have to put yes, and then they don't hire you. Great. Get rid of that, right? Because, and first and foremost, when someone is, okay, let's say that there was a reason they went to prison and they have paid their debt to society. Well, double jeopardy, right? They can't be continuously abused or punished for something they did before when they already paid their debt. Give them all their rights back. And, it doesn't matter if people are somewhat bothered by that. It's not a matter of what people are bothered by or NIMBYism. What it matters is that person is a human being and deserves to be able to reclaim their life and do better. So checkbox, got to get rid of that. They should be able to vote in prison because, well, it's a perverse incentive, right? Oh, you put people in prison, now they can't vote to get themselves out of prison or to get rid of the felon checkbox or any of these other things. Those are, I'm pretty passionate about that. We really need to invest in free public college. That's really investing in our people. It creates much greater returns. Just business people know that. You invest in something, you invest in infrastructure, whether it's intellectual or physical infrastructure, and you get some kind of return, usually really good. Not prisons. Let's have schools, not prisons.
Absolutely. And you do also talk about healthcare. I know we touched on that a little bit, but you do support university.
Well, I think that it's the job of leaders to create conditions where the people can thrive, not, as we've seen in past decades, where conditions are such, leaders are creating conditions where the people are extracted from. We need to make it so that we're more like the rest of the developed world, but not only just to keep up, because it's moral, because it's the right thing to do. And that should apply to everybody. The fact is, everyone is paying in, or whoever goes to an emergency room, if you go to an emergency room, someone picks up the tab. It's either the government or the hospital or whatever, but then other people's rates go up. The money is all in this, right? If you look at the flow chart right now, it just has a loop that goes into insurance companies, and 30% of the profits are taken off the top, right? One thing I've been talking about is that 70% of the money in the healthcare system right now in California is paid for by the government. Well, if you look at those two numbers, broad brush, it looks like the money's already there. Beside the fact that we already know all the money's there because it's going in and out somehow. So with SB 562 is what we have here in California. I've been for the whole time. There have been other iterations of this idea. With that, the state would be like an accountant, and the money would flow in from actually, frankly, lower policies, go into this, sort of one big pool. So everybody's in one big pool. Obviously, if you're in the bigger pool you are, the cheaper the coverage, because it balances it all out. So all your rates come down, and the bargaining power is much greater. And so so that state does that, and then it pays the private doctors. All the private doctors are all the same. At some point, it would be nice to go back to healthcare is not for profit. That was changed by Nixon. We have to live with some of the systems that we have right now. We have to work it, like I was talking about with prisons. You have to work your way back from these disastrous things that have been done. Reagan pushed all the mentally ill people out on the street and closed all the mental hospitals. We have to deal with these problems and basically redo everything that was messed up. But in that instance, you would pay your policy, and then you would just go to whatever dentist, whatever eye care doctor, whatever healthcare, mental health care doctor. Imagine being able to go anywhere. Doesn't matter. And, just get the best rate or the best person or nearest to you. So I am very passionate about that. In fact, I might add one thing. Back when the ACA was being started, I wrote every single congressperson, Senate, House of Representatives, President, Vice President, a letter that described that I'm in support of this. And there are historical reasons why the United States should be for universal health care, because the second president, first vice president, John Adams, was for single payer. Even if you go back to this sort of constitutionalist idea, he started the Marine Health Service Act, which became the Marine Health Service Corps, which became the United States National Health Service Corps. Sounds very much like the NHS in Britain, National Health Service Corps. That's why we have a Surgeon General. The CDC is part of that system. And we literally have a military branch devoted to healthcare because the military is a socialist program. Because it is in the very DNA of the United States to have universal health care. It's just that they couldn't afford it as much back then. Now look, California is the 5th largest economy in the world, right? The United States is huge economically. We can pay for this. It is not impossible. If Japan can do it or France can do it, we can do it. California alone can do it. We just have to fix our income inequality problem. So if you noticed, I'm very passionate about universal health care. And I know a lot about the history of it back to 98 is when it started here.
So how does it make you feel that you as a Californian, you guys came the closest we've ever come to, being able to attain that, and a Democrat is someone who acted.
Yeah, I mean these corporate Democrats. It's as if they are. We know that the chair of the Democratic Party here in California got money from Big Pharma, and I saw this video that there's a group here in California that I know, the people who run it, Millie Goldstein, I believe is her name, and so. They showed these movies, and there was actually, I don't know if you've heard about this, but I think 7 different states throughout the United States have tried to have universal health care. There was one in Maine. Every single time it's been tried, they got close. And you know who killed it? The governor. Every time. So the corporations, big giant big pharma, insurance companies, these who knows how much money is, billions, maybe trillions. They know there's a choke point, in the flow chart of all this. There's this little bottleneck, and what we have to do is bust this bottleneck open. And that is one of the reasons I'm running for governor, because I swear to you, if I get in, when I get elected, I am going to tell them, assemble SB 562 in the assembly, because it's just waiting there. Put it on my desk, and I will sign it immediately, right? So the fact that Rendon, that's his name, the Speaker of the Assembly, he tabled it. And you should have seen the outrage, the call for his, being challenged, and he is being challenged because of that, directly because of that. There's another person's being challenged. I think you might have him on soon. Am I right? Eric Frame. He's going up against a guy who was
he's coming.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he's against a guy who is against it in the Senate, a Democrat who I was in the Democratic Central Committee meeting of this county watching when he said, I said, did you, you're against it, right? You were against SB 562. He said, no, I wasn't against it. I just spoke not in favor of it, right? Okay. I know people, because I know people all over in the Democratic Party higher up structure and all kinds of other parties. And, I'm elected to my Yolo County Green Party Council and on the state coordinating committee level, and I've applied to the U.S. level as well. And I actually put a bunch of people in the Democratic Party. This is something we didn't talk about in what's called the ADEMs in California. And so I have a bunch of people in the Democratic Party that were super lefty who like hassle them and make them try to hold their feet to the fire and all this stuff. So I hear these things all the time. And I have been told by people in the room in the Senate that he spoke against it, urging the Republicans to not, this is Senator Pan, urging Republicans to not vote for it, and then walked out of the room before the vote was held. So when I say that he voted against it, what I really mean is he was against it and he didn't vote. But it was a way to turn
So he has no balls, essentially.
Yeah. Or he's paid off by the, big pharma and everything, by insurance companies. He's a doctor who's against.
But then Rendon was actually asked to speak at the Women's March. Makes sense.
Yeah, unless that's maybe shilling too.
What's that?
Unless the Women's March is possibly a prelude to getting Hillary to challenge Trump. Right?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
So we don't know.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. Okay, so hi, Ashley. Ashley Frame is actually in the comments.
Oh, really?
So she said, vote Eric Frame instead of Richard Pan. I actually heard that from a few people today. So as far as, a final thought, what do you want to leave our viewers with so that they check out your website, hopefully throw you a few dollars, tell any people in California to check you out, to consider you? What do you want to leave them with? Okay.
I am committed to running corporate free. I have never taken corporate money. I never will. This is not my last stop. Like I have been told by some very well-connected people, and this is important because people need hope, right? I have been told by some very high up people, and we didn't talk about this, so I should probably bring this up real quick at some point, that I need to get ready for some very hardcore, serious interviews. It is distinctly possible that the people who don't vote in California, a big chunk of them might be voting for me. Also, 17% of the electorate in California are so-called Bernie-crats, okay? If all of those people vote for me, I get in the top two. There are independents. It's pretty interesting. So, yes, if you're in California, or if you know people in California, please urge them to go check out my website, Josh4, that's number 4, josh4gov.org. And you can see the donate link right there on the front page anyway. And it would be really helpful to get a few extra, $100 or $1,000 or something, because we still have a week to go and we want to continue to go all over California. This is not over, and we're going to keep going, keep running, help other candidates run corporate free, push hard, increase the strength of the the Green Party, but also try to figure out how to cross endorse as many people as possible. We're working on a way that we could work stronger, more unified with corporate-free Democrats. It's tough, but we managed this year, first time ever in the Green Party of California's history, to cross-endorse with independents like Gail McLaughlin, who I am definitely voting for, and also peace and freedom people who so what it is if we don't have people running in that area, we have this like cross-party, kind of almost a corporate-free party growing. The nascent beginnings of a opposition to the oligarchy, to the duopoly, which I tend to think of as a corporate party. The question is, can the corporate free party challenge and win against the corporate party? They have a lot of money. They have a lot of laws on their side, but we can use a little bit of money and a lot of people power, and we can win. So be encouraged out there. We can fix this. We can change this. It is not written in stone that these people are going to rule over us forever. It's happened before in history where, you know, we quit having kings or whatever. We quit having oligarchs and went back to a democracy or a democratic system, a system of the people. We can do that again. So if you vote for me, if you know somebody in California, please encourage them. Josh Jones, simple name, for governor. G, right? Green, G for governor. And, you know, make phone calls for me. We have this program right now. It's called 5 by 5. So call 5 of your friends and say, okay, here's Josh Jones. He's never going to turn his back on you. He's going to appoint people like women and minorities and everybody that needs to be there, indigenous people, to proper positions. Not all these, rich folks to everything and control everything that we do. And, get out there, tell them, and then ask them to call 5 more people. So that's 5 by 5, right? But I'm hopeful that we can win. And we're not going to stop. We're going to keep going and train more. And with the training that I've got and the knowledge I have, I'm going to get more and more people, women, people of color, to come in and run. Because like Bernie said, you have to get out there. Take control of our government. Get out there, run.
Absolutely. And you guys may have gathered by what Josh was saying, but California is really interesting in that the top 2 people go against each other. It could be 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans, 1 of each, a Green, an Indy. It doesn't matter. The top 2 people are the ones who go against each other. So it is possible to see Josh up against Delaney, which I would love.
That would be fascinating.
That would be amazing.
Mm-hmm. Or Newsom, maybe. Or Cox. You know, there's a guy named Cox. It's COX.
I'm too immature for that shit.
By the way, I want to show you this. Driscoll's boycott. I don't know if you can see it.
Oh, yes.
Can you read that?
Boycott Driscoll berries.
Yes. So this is a good friend of mine. They've started different unions here in California. Yeah, I'm sure you've heard of Cesar Chavez, right?
Sure.
The big grape boycott. And eventually they were able to make a union that protected those people, the grape pickers. Well, there's another one down in Baja California. So that's like the little piece of California that goes down past the United States. We're in Alta, California, which is high California, right? Instead of low California. And so that's where I live, in Alta, California. But in this place, a place I used to camp at, is called San Quintin. It used to be a little village, little cool village. You could go fish on the beach and giant sand dunes going all the way from horizon to horizon. The whole place is now a giant greenhouse. It's all covered with plastic. They grow berries in it all year round. And everybody in there they get paid, very small amount of money. Their kids have to work there. If they try to unionize, they get sprayed with poison sometimes. And we went to this binational conference of unions in LA way back about in October of 2017. And the people described how a woman died because she was sprayed with pesticide down there. So all they want to do is have a union. That's all they're asking, just like the grape boycott, right? These people, they just want to get paid something where they can live in a good house. Right now they live in shacks. They don't have running water. They can't get water to drink or bathe in. Deplorable conditions. So I am definitely in support of the Mexican farm workers down there. Boycott Driscoll berries. You'll see them all over in various places in your grocery stores. Until they have a union, I'm not buying them. So I wanted to put that in there.
Yeah, right on. So you guys, you have the opportunity to vote on Tuesday. You watching in Cali. On Tuesday, there are 8 primaries, which is kind of bananas. Alabama, California, Iowa, Mississippi, Montana, New Jersey, New Mexico, and South Dakota. So you guys have research to do. I don't tell people who to vote for, but please just do your research. Do not take people at their word that they're not corporate candidates, especially if they're Dems. I have called several guests out for that. Go to votesmart.org. Go to, what's another one? My open source. Look up these things because it's very, lack of a better term, trendy to say you don't take corporate money and you're so-called progressive. But anybody can put anything on a platform. I want to know how they voted in the past. I want to know where the money comes from, things like that. So do your research. Also promote who you are going to vote for. Too many times I interview candidates and I go to their website and they only have a couple hundred likes. We got to get real progressives like this out there. We can only win by social media. We learned that. We definitely have to do our part, even if it means just sharing interviews or platforms or anything. Get active the next week for sure. Tomorrow night, I have another Cali Green. I'm probably going to butcher his last name, Jason Kishinev.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, that is correct. He's running for Congress district, and Wednesday I have an independent, Eric Frame, who's running in California for Senate District 6. So I'm excited. I have 3 candidates this week so far who are green and independent. So that's very exciting for me. But thank you guys so much for watching. Please vote Tuesday, whoever you choose to vote for. Thank you so much, Josh, and best of luck. You're an amazing person, and I know you're not going to stop regardless because you're.
I'm not. Can I say one thing before we go?
Absolutely.
So you're talking about social media. If you go to my Twitter, it's just Josh4Gov, the same idea with the number 4, and my Facebook page is the same. So that makes it really simple to look those up.
Hell yeah, it does. And you know what, Sadie, if you want to post links in the comments as well, you can do that. You're free to post any links from the website or whatever you'd like.
Did you hear that, Sadie?
What?
My campaign manager. you were telling Sadie.
We've become very close the past 24 hours.
Yeah. We found out that you and I and Sadie have done a lot of the same things, right? Gone to protest at the DNC and worked our asses off for Bernie and learned all. Imagine, like a couple of years ago, will we be doing this?
Yeah, seriously.
Yes. It's amazing. Like, just experience. It's, anyone can do that. You just go out, do it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you guys so much for watching. Tomorrow and Wednesday, so far I may be adding more shows, but tomorrow and Wednesday, 9:00 p.m. Eastern. And again, thank you so much, Josh, and best of luck Tuesday.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely.
And thanks for having me on, Joy.
Absolutely. Take care.